Frank Darabont's script is very like another director who successfully adapted work Stephen King, Rob Reiner, director nostalgic drama Stand By Me, and psychological thriller Misery. Reiner was so captivated by the material that offered $2.5 million for the rights to the script and film production. Darabont seriously thought about the proposal, but ultimately decided that this project was a chance for him to do something truly great, and directed the film himself. The role of Andy Dufresne was originally offered to Tom Hanks. He was very interested but could not accept the proposal due to the fact that he was already involved in the Forrest Gump project, and subsequently Hanks starred in prison. Frank Darabont's drama The Green Mile, also based on the novel by Stephen King, was also offered the role of Andy Dufresne. Kevin Costner, but the actor refused suggestions about what later strongly regretted. To prepare for his role, Tim Robbins actually spent some time in solitary confinement. Despite that, almost all residents of the city of Mansfield expressed a desire to take part in crowd scenes of the film. Most residents were too busy with their own work and couldn't act as extras, had to recruit a local almshouse, and some of its inhabitants were former prisoners. $370,000 stolen by Andy from the warden 1966 may not seem huge amount for a 20-year prison term, but adjusted for inflation in 2014, Andy stole the equivalent of $2,703,467.
The river of dirty money flows here.
Sooner or later you still have to explain where they came from.
This is where I come into play. I transfer them into shares.
In the original story by Stephen King, Red Irish, despite the fact that film adaptation, the role was played by a black man, it was decided to leave Morgan Freeman in the film. The line is red, maybe because that I am Irish is like a good joke. A story by King and a 9-page story by Leo Tolstoy, God sees the truth, but he will not tell soon, combined several plots moves. Both of them are about people sent to prison for murders they did not commit. Most of the voiceover narration very clearly synchronized with happening on the screen, for example in a scene on the roof when the prisoners drink beer.
We sat and drank with the sun on our shoulders and felt like free men. Hell, we could have been tarring the roof of one of our own houses.
Darabont played the recording during filming Freeman's voices to coordinate the actors' actions, but the recording quality turned out to be too bad to turn on him into the final version of the film, so Freeman had to re-record the voiceover in post-production. The voiceover for the entire film was recorded by Morgan Freeman in just 40 minutes at a studio in Iowa. They put it on filming time to ensure proper the effect mentioned earlier, but because local sound engineers made a series of processing errors, then subsequently it had to be rewritten to studios in Los Angeles. This time it took 3 weeks. All takes of the famous scenes in which Tim Robbins stands in the rain with arms outstretched after how his hero Andy got out of sewer pipe were out of focus, except for the last one who entered in the movie. In the scene where Andy first enters the library as Brooks' assistant, Brooks's raven named Jake is sitting there. At this point Tim Robbins should have said the line, "Hey Jake, where's Brooks?" and do this in the interval between croaks crow. It took the actor a long time to do this. Study bird behavior. You can see how closely Tim Robbins looks at the bird and carefully selects the tempo of the phrase itself. When the head of the prison opens the Bible then reveals what exactly is in it, the main character hit a stone hammer. This is not without reason. While the hero is escaping from prison, this chapter talks about escape of Jews from Egypt. According to Morgan Freeman, the shooting was fraught with extreme stress, so like between actors, producers and Frank Darabont there were constant disagreements. In an Entertainment Interview Weekly he said that the atmosphere was very strange and he refused to talk more on this later. In Hungary the film was released in rental under the name Prisoners of Hope, in Norway The Reign of Freedom, in Mexico Dreams of Escape, but the coolest thing was done in Taiwan. The film was released under title 1995 Science Fiction. Many viewers it was going to be an action movie. Red meets with the commission on parole 3 times, they tell him to sit down the first time, and sit down the second time, and the third time finally please sit down. Although it was not mentioned in the film itself, Brooks went to prison for the murder of his wife and daughter after losing at poker. 1949 beer bottles were not closed lids as shown in the film. Role Tommy Williams was originally written to Brad Pitt. Rob Reiner, if he became a director, he wanted Harrison Ford for the role of Red, and Tom Cruise for the role of Andy Dufresne. Photos of young Morgan Freeman on the documents actually are photographs of his son, Alfonso Freeman, who also starred in one of movie episodes. Despite the fact that the film did not collect large numbers in cinema's money, it became one of the highest-grossing releases on video, then the most favorite film actor Morgan Freeman with and his participation. The original story by Stephen King was based on, in the words of the writer himself, the culmination of all his impressions from various prison movies he watched as a child. The film is dedicated to Alan Green's loved one, director's friend. Alan has passed away shortly before the film's release due to AIDS complications. The Mexican paradise of Zihuatanejo really exists. This is a tourist resort city on the Pacific Coast Mexican state of Guerrero. Frank Darabont decided not to leave deleted scenes on the film's DVD release because he did not want them to be seen. In 1986, Darabont entered into an agreement with King to film Shawshank. For him at that time, this story was no longer simply one of King's favorite works and a guiding star. It inspired him not to give up and move on towards his goal, independent creation Hollywood cinema, no matter what the obstacles didn't get in his way. And Darabont felt that he could do it with dignity. Film Shawshank if you first gain screenwriting and production experience. In turn, King was ready to wait for Darabont to reach condition and not to sell the rights to anyone else. For his troubles he asked Darabont for only $5,000. Uniquely low price for film rights works of the best-selling master. For King this amount was so modest that he did not cash the Darabont check but deposited, framed it and hung it on the wall as souvenir. When writing the script, Darabont tried to save as much as possible plot twists and stylistic features of the text, even if it had to go against tradition. So a guide to screenwriting usually recommends getting rid of voiceover narrator and show don't tell. Darabont, however, saw that he would lose too much if we get rid of the mental comments and explanations of Red, on whose behalf we recall that the story was narrated. When he was struggling with this dilemma, he saw Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas on TV, where there are a lot of voiceover lines, and decided that this was a sign of fate, a transparent hint from the universe that voiceover can be included in the script. However, Darabont still allowed himself some liberties. In particular, he made Shawshank's jailers bigger villains than in King's story, and at the same time allowed Dufresne in the climax of the film not only to escape from prison but also to take revenge on the scoundrels by stealing the director's money from a corrupt official and convicting the head of security of murder. In the story, the hero escaped and went to Mexico for your own money, in advance hidden during the trial. From the very beginning of work on the film, the director knew that a lot would happen depends on whether we can find a spectacular empty prison for filming. And he managed to find just what he was looking for in the city of Mansfield, State, Ohio. After the prison was closed, it was supposed to be demolished, but the City Historical Society ensured that the most beautiful buildings were preserved as architectural monuments. After the end of the film, almost the entire complex was demolished. Only the prison building and the main thing remained, administrative building, which were saved for history and tourists. When we see on the screen close-ups of Andy Dufresne's hands when at the beginning of the film he loads a revolver. Also later when Andy cuts out his name on the wall of his cell, this is actually hands of film director Frank Darabont, and not the actor Tim Robbins. These close-ups were filmed during post-production film and inserted into already filmed materials. Initially the film script was ending just like in the story. The bus took Red to where Dufresne was waiting for him. It was an optimistic but restrained ending, and Darabont liked her very much. But the producers have already demanded at the heroes they still met in the finale. Darabont could no longer insist on his position due to the terms of the agreement with the studio. His rights to final editing, that is the right to single-handedly determine what would be included in the film, extended only to the first 2 hours of the production. And since the epilogue was already beyond this framework, Darabont was forced to film a real happy ending. However, it was not offended. On reflection, he felt that his heroes really deserved a touching meeting on the ocean. There are several similarities with Alexander's novel Dumas' Count of Monte Cristo, who also mentioned during the film. There is a person involved in Dumas' novel wrongly imprisoned for a crime, who later makes a daring escape, after spending years digging a tunnel. After escaping, he acquired hidden treasures that he learned about in prison and carried out a plan of revenge on those who put him in prison. Interesting fact, in 2007 two county jail inmates union escaped from there using methods similar to those shown in this film. Their escape led to suicide of a prison guard. When the escapees were captured, they denied responsibility for death of a security guard. American Society Animal Welfare criticized the movie address in which the only representative of the fauna was the raven of Old Man Brooks. In the picture there is a scene of feeding the bird a worm, found during lunch on the plate of the main character of the film. Society insisted that it be used an already dead larva that died a natural death. After such an individual was found, the scene was filmed. The film confidently occupies a leading position in the lists of the best films of all times based on audience results voting. As of today, the film ranks first place in the list of 250 best films by IMDb versions. Film can transcend merely being a series of pictures, no matter how pretty, and can reach down and touch people. That is where Shawshank succeeds so brilliantly, but this movie absolutely sings with human spirit, and captures an universal human theme as well as any movie has ever done.